Joe Rogan is officially the worst UFC commentator right now, dude. What's up, boys? We're back. Today, we're going to be talking about Joe Rogan and his commentary, which is getting a little bit stale at this point. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, because we're trying to hit 800 subscribers by the end of the year, so it would mean a lot. But without further ado, let's talk about it. So Joe Rogan, obviously, he's been with the UFC for pretty much his entire modern-day existence, and since 2003, I believe, is when he started. And him and Dana White have always had a close relationship. And back in the day, Joe Rogan, he was obsessed with MMA. And I'm not saying that Joe Rogan isn't obsessed with the sport of MMA, but right now, he doesn't know as much as he used to. You know, Joe Rogan back in the day knew every single fighter, knew every single weight class, knew every single little thing about every fighter, you know? And that's not his fault that he's fallen away from these things in the last couple years, because the UFC roster has just grown to be so big. So obviously, he can't memorize every fighter. He can't know every little habit of every fighter. He doesn't know this stuff, you know. And I just feel like he doesn't even study tape sometimes, though. Cause you look, and he just doesn't even know what he's talking about. And the other day, UFC 313, he called Amanda Lemos. He called her a little boy. He said this young man has serious potential, and he doesn't even know what gender the fighters are now. It's shocking, and like I said earlier, it's stale. It really is just stale. When he mentions the Muay Thai Cups now, when he mentions the leg kicks, anytime Pereira fights, be prepared to hear calf kicks, leg kicks 50 times in that fight. Because that's, that calf kick, that calf is done, dude. That calf is done. And I'm just tired of it, dude, because, you know, Joe's there for vibes at this point, you know. He's not there for any other reason than vibes. You know, you have DC who can throw in some good jabs at Joe every now and then, and Jon Anik, who's obviously the best commentator in the UFC right now, in my opinion. He does his research. It's clear. He knows the most out of any other commentator. I mean, this guy knows too much at sometimes, because sometimes you see Jon Anik, and he's just like, yeah, both of these fighters have been in custody battles in their previous... Like, it doesn't make sense how this guy knows so much. So Jon Anik is, in my opinion, the best UFC commentator right now. And Joe Rogan, he's there for vibes, like I said. He's not there for any other reason. Because when you see Joe Rogan, he's not on as much pay-per-views as he used to be. But in the rare instance that you do see Joe Rogan on a pay-per-view, like just this weekend, we saw Joe Rogan back. And he was just... This is when I really noticed it, dude. Because at UFC 313, it was a good card, you know? But Joe Rogan wasn't there, dude. It just felt like he was just a little bit more dead. It felt like he was a little bit more... And I think, I don't know, man. I honestly think the podcast is doing stuff to him. I don't know. He's not the knowledgeable commentator anymore. And it feels like he just shows up to UFC live events and pretends to know it all, when it's clear he obviously does not know much about the sport. So, we're actually I'm going to be giving you fighters who I think would be great on that commentary booth to replace Joe Rogan in future years, whenever they're retired, or if they are retired in that case. We'll put him there. The first fighter I have who need to do commentary, it's going to be Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson. You're probably like, oh, Mighty Mouse is on horrible terms with the UFC right now, bro. That is not happening. And yeah, that is true. You know, Mighty Mouse and Dana White do not have the best relationship, but they've never had the best relationship, and they've worked through it. Mighty Mouse, you can see in his YouTube channel, in his podcast, this guy has some of the most tactical breakdowns ever, and he truly understands the sport, and Mighty Mouse would just be such a great commentator for this sport. And hopefully him and Dana can get back on good terms, because Mighty Mouse is a great commentator, you know. And now that he's out of one championship, he's retired, I can definitely see this being a genuine possibility. Moving on to the next fighter I do have, it's going to be Michael Chandler. You know, this might be a little bit of a random one thrown here. I can just see his personality. You know, I can envision Michael Chandler on my screen in a black tuxedo with a microphone in his hand, just ready to talk about some fight with me. And I feel like he'd bring the same vibes as a DC, you know. Not much analytical views, but still now and then he knows a lot, and he can talk about the wrestling, you know, similar to DC. So I would like Michael Chandler to be a commentator, you know. He has that voice as well, dude. He knows how to cut a promo. He knows how to talk to fans, and that's why Michael Chandler for me would be a great commentator. And yeah, the next fighter I do have is gonna be Kamaru Usman. Listen, Kush. I think Kamaru Usman would be a great addition to the UFC commentary team. We've seen him behind the scenes sometimes after the fight, the post-fight interviews with the fighters. And he just, obviously, he has the podcast with Triple C. I was considering putting Henry Cejudo on this list, but, like, I do not want to listen to that man's annoying voice on commentary for 3 hours a night. But Kamaru Usman, he's a little bit more laid back. You know, he knows the sport, too. You know, he can add some wrestling views similar to Michael Chandler in DC, but like I said earlier. And I think he's striking. He knows the game, dude. Kamaru Usman knows the game. He dominated the game, and, you know, he did a lot for the UFC. He doesn't have any more knees anymore, so he can't fight. So, you know, give him a commentary job, please, UFC. The next fighter I do have, it's going to be Hey, listen, dude. Dustin Poirier, dude. We're putting me on the list because I feel like Dustin Poirier, he's the legend of the sport. He's similar to these DCs. He's similar to these Paul Fielder. I'm not saying Paul Fielder's a legend, but still, you get what I'm saying here. Dustin Poirier, this guy, I feel like it's a guarantee. This is a lock. Dustin Poirier will commentate on a UFC fight before, I don't know, but he will eventually commentate on a UFC. That's my prediction, dude. Because this guy, he knows his boxing, obviously, and he just has a voice. Dude, these calf kicks, dude, they're working for him, dude. I can just imagine Dustin Poirier saying that at UFC like 370, just Dustin Poirier in the commentary booth, dude. I can see that so obviously. The next fighter I have, the final fighter I do have, I think this guy, I don't know. It's been a couple years since this guy retired, and not a couple years. It's actually been a decade since this guy retired. I am not impressed with your performance, GSP, dude. It's been 10 years since you came back in 2015 and retired, and we're in 2025 now. So that's pretty crazy to think about. But GSP, I feel like whenever I see this guy on TikTok, whenever I see this guy on YouTube, he's just doing the most NPC stuff ever. We need to get GSP a job at the UFC commentating booth, dude. He might have a little bit of a strong accent, but that's okay. We can push through that. Dustin Poirier has a strong accent too. And you can just have him. I can see this guy interviewing fight. That was a very good performance, but who do you want next in your next fight? I can imagine GSP just walking up to some dude and interviewing him like that. Walking up to Bilal Muhammad and giving him an interview, the Canadian boys. But GSP, like I said, he has incredible knowledge on the game, similar to Mighty Mouse. And he can break down stuff, and he's a legend of the sport, dude. So I think GSP, George St-Pierre, is a lock on that commentary booth in the future. And yeah, boys, that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you much for watching. Octagon Outpost out.